In the vast expanse of history, there are those whose stories remain untold, their adventures lost in the passage of time. Among them stands Richard Francis Burton, a man whose life was a tapestry woven with threads of exploration, scholarship, and daring. Burton was born in Torquay, Devon, on March 19, 1821. He incorrectly claimed to have been born in the family home at Barham House in Elstree in Hertfordshire. He was baptized on September 2, 1821 at Elstree Church in Boreham Wood, Hertfordshire. His father, Colonel Joseph Netterville Burton, of the 36th Regiment, was an Irish-born British Army officer of Anglo-Irish extraction who through his mother's family, the Campbells of Tuam, was a first cousin of Colonel Henry Peard Driscoll and Mrs. Richard Graves. Richard's mother, Martha Baker, was the daughter and co-heiress of a wealthy English squire, Richard Baker, of Barham House, Hertfordshire, for whom he was named. Burton had two siblings, Maria Catherine Elizabeth Burton, who married General Sir Henry William Stisted, and Edward Joseph Netterville Burton, born in 1823 and 1824. Burton's family traveled extensively during his childhood and employed various tutors to educate him. In 1825, they moved to Tours in France. In 1829, Burton began a formal education at a preparatory school in Richmond Green in Richmond, Surrey, run by Reverend Charles Delafosse. His family traveled between England, France, and Italy. Burton showed a talent to learn languages and quickly learned French, Italian, Neapolitan and Latin, as well as several dialects. During his youth, he allegedly had an affair with a Roma girl and learned the rudiments of the Romani language. The peregrinations of his youth may have encouraged Burton to regard himself as an outsider for much of his life. As he put it, "Do what thy manhood bids thee do, from none but self expect applause." In his own words, fit for nothing but to be shot at for 6 pence a day, Burton enlisted in the army of the East India Company at the behest of his ex-college classmates who were already members. He hoped to fight in the First Afghan War, but the conflict was over before he arrived in India. He was posted to the 18th Bombay Native Infantry based in Gujarat and under the command of General Charles James Napier. While in India, he became a proficient speaker of Hindustani, Gujarati, Punjabi, Sindhi, Saraiki and Marathi as well as Persian and Arabic. His studies of Hindu culture had progressed to such an extent that my Hindu teacher officially allowed me to wear the janiyo. Him Chand, his Gotra teacher, a Nagar Brahmin, could have been an apostate. Burton had a documented interest, and actively participated, in the cultures and religions of India. This was one of many peculiar habits that set him apart from other soldiers. While in the army, he kept a large menagerie of tame monkeys in the hopes of learning their language, accumulating 60 words. He also earned the name Ruffian Dick for his demonic ferocity as a fighter and because he had fought in single combat more enemies than perhaps any other man of his time. As he matured, Burton's thirst for adventure beckoned him beyond the familiar confines of England, leading him to embark on a series of journeys that would shape his legacy and redefine the boundaries of exploration. Burton's pilgrimage to Medina and Mecca in 1853 was his realization of the plans and hopes of many and many a year to study thoroughly the inner life of the Moslem. Traveling through Alexandria in April, then Cairo in May, where he stayed in June during Ramadan, Burton first donned the guise of a Persian Mirza, then a Sunni sheikh, doctor, magician and dervish. Accompanied by an Indian boy slave called Nur, Burton further equipped himself with a case for carrying the Quran, but instead had 3 compartments for his watch and compass, money, and penknife, pencils, and numbered pieces of paper for taking notes. His diary he kept in a break pocket, unseen. Burton traveled onwards with a group of nomads to Suez, sailed to Yambu, and joined a caravan to Medina, where he arrived on July 27, earning the title Zair. Departing Medina with the Damascus caravan on August 31, Burton entered Mecca on September 11. Motivated by his love of adventure, Burton got the approval of the Royal Geographical Society for an exploration of the area, and he gained permission from the board of directors of the East India Company to take leave from the army. His 7 years in India gave Burton a familiarity with the customs and behavior of Muslims and prepared him to attempt a Hajj, pilgrimage to Mecca and, in this case, Medina. It was this journey, undertaken in 1853, which first made Burton famous. He had planned it whilst traveling disguised among the Muslims of Sind, and had laboriously prepared for the adventure by study and practice, including undergoing the Muslim tradition of circumcision to further lower the risk of being discovered. In May 1854, Burton traveled to Aden in preparation for his Somaliland expedition, supported by the Royal Geographical Society. Other members included Hearn, William Stroyan, and John Hanning Speke. Burton undertook the expedition to Harar. Speke investigated the Wadi Nogal, while Hearn and Stroyan stayed on at Berbera. According to Burton, a tradition exists that with the entrance of the first, white, Christian, Harar will fall. With Burton's entry, the guardian spell was broken. In 1856, the Royal Geographical Society funded another expedition for Burton and Speke, an exploration of the then utterly unknown lake regions of Central Africa. They would travel from Zanzibar to Ujiji along a caravan route established in 1825 by an Arab slave and ivory merchant. The great journey commenced on June 5, 1857 with their departure from Zanzibar, where they had stayed at the residence of Atkins Haymerton, the British consul, their caravan consisting of Baluchi mercenaries led by Ramji, 36 porters, eventually a total of 132 persons, all led by the caravan leader Said bin Salim. From the beginning, Burton and Speke were hindered by disease, malaria, fevers, and other maladies, at times both having to be carried in a hammock. Pack animals died, and natives deserted, taking supplies with them. Yet, on November 7, 1857, they made it to Kaze, and departed for Ujiji on December 14. Speke wanted to head north, sure they would find the source of the Nile at what he later named Victoria Nyanza, but Burton persisted in heading west. The expedition arrived at Lake Tanganyika on February 13, 1858. Burton was awestruck by the sight of the magnificent lake, but Speke, who had been temporarily blinded, was unable to see the body of water. By this point much of their surveying equipment was lost, ruined, or stolen, and they were unable to complete surveys of the area as well as they wished. Burton was again taken ill on the return journey. Speke continued exploring without him, making a journey to the north and eventually locating the Great Lake Victoria, or Victoria Nyanza, on August 3. Lacking supplies and proper instruments, Speke was unable to survey the area properly but was privately convinced that it was the long-sought source of the Nile. Burton's description of the journey is given in lake regions of equatorial Africa. Speke gave his own account in the Journal of the Discovery of the Source of the Nile in 1863. A prolonged public quarrel followed, damaging the reputations of both Burton and Speke. Some biographers have suggested that friends of Speke, particularly Lawrence Oliphant, had initially stirred up trouble between the two. Burton's sympathizers contend that Speke resented Burton's leadership role. Tim Giel, who has accessed Speke's personal papers, suggests that it was more likely the other way around, Burton being jealous and resentful of Speke's determination and success. As the years went by, Burton, would neglect no opportunity to deride and undermine Speke's geographical theories and achievements. Speke had earlier proven his mettle by trekking through the mountains of Tibet, but Burton regarded him as inferior as he did not speak any Arabic or African languages. Despite his fascination with non-European cultures, some have portrayed Burton as an unabashed imperialist convinced of the historical and intellectual superiority of the white race, citing his involvement in the Anthropological Society, an organization that established a doctrine of scientific racism. Speke appears to have been kinder and less intrusive to the Africans they encountered, and reportedly fell in love with an African woman on a later expedition. The two men traveled home separately. Speke returned to London first and presented a lecture at the Royal Geographical Society, claiming Lake Victoria as the source of the Nile. According to Burton, Speke broke an agreement they had made to give their first public speech together. Apart from Burton's word, there is no proof that such an agreement existed, and most modern researchers doubt that it did. Tim Giel, evaluating the written evidence, says the odds are heavily against Speke having made a pledge to his former leader. On September 16, 1864, Burton and Speke were scheduled to debate the source of the Nile at a meeting of the British Association for the Advancement of Science. On the day before the debate, Burton and Speke sat near each other in the lecture hall. According to Burton's wife, Speke stood up, said, "I can't stand this any longer," and abruptly left the hall. That afternoon Speke went hunting on the nearby estate of a relative. He was discovered lying near a stone wall, felled by a fatal gunshot wound from his hunting shotgun. Burton learned of Speke's death the following day while waiting for their debate to begin. A jury ruled Speke's death an accident. An obituary surmised that Speke, while climbing over the wall, had carelessly pulled the gun after himself with the muzzle pointing at his chest and shot himself. Alexander Maitland, Speke's only biographer, concurs. On January 22, 1861, Burton and Isabella Arundel married in a quiet Catholic ceremony, although he did not adopt the Catholic faith at this time. Shortly after this, the couple were forced to spend some time apart when he formally entered the diplomatic service as consul on the island of Fernando Po, now Bioko in Equatorial Guinea. This was not a prestigious appointment. Because the climate was considered extremely unhealthy for Europeans, Isabel could not accompany him. Burton spent much of this time exploring the coast of West Africa, documenting his findings in Abeokuta and the Cameroons Mountains, an exploration in 1863, and a mission to Jalil, king of Dahomey. He described some of his experiences, including a trip up the Congo River to the Yelala Falls and beyond, in his 1876 book Two Trips to Gorilla Land and the Cataracts of the Congo. As he entered his twilight years, Burton continued to push the boundaries of knowledge and understanding. Though his health declined, his thirst for adventure remained undiminished. Burton died in Trieste early on the morning of October 20, 1890 of a heart attack. His wife Isabel persuaded a priest to perform the last rites, although Burton was not a Catholic, and this action later caused a rift between Isabel and some of Burton's friends. It has been suggested that the death occurred very late on October 19 and that Burton was already dead by the time the last rites were administered. On his religious views, Burton called himself an atheist, stating he was raised in the Church of England, which he said was, officially, his church. Isabel never recovered from the loss. After his death she burned many of her husband's papers, including journals and a planned new translation of the perfumed garden to be called the Scented Garden, for which she had been offered 6,000 guineas and which she regarded as his magnum opus. She believed she was acting to protect her husband's reputation, and that she had been instructed to burn the manuscript of the scented garden by his spirit, but her actions were controversial. However, a substantial quantity of his written materials have survived, and are held by the Huntington Library in San Marino, California, including 21 boxes of his manuscripts, 24 boxes of correspondence, and other material. And so we bid farewell to Richard Francis Burton, a man who dared to defy the conventions of his time, embarking on journeys that would forever change our understanding of the world. His legacy lives on, not just in the pages of history books, but in the hearts of all those who are inspired by his insatiable curiosity and unwavering courage. As we continue our own explorations, may we always remember the lessons imparted by this remarkable adventurer, to embrace the unknown, to challenge the status quo, and to never stop seeking knowledge. In the footsteps of Richard Francis Burton, let us journey forth with open minds and boundless curiosity, ready to discover the wonders that await us.